The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of its host, guests, and callers that are not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Welcome to the STARS program, Seniors Taking Active Roles in Society, with your host, Anita Finley. Your comments and questions are welcome during today's broadcast. Call us toll-free at 888-721-0074. That's 888-721-0074. And now, here's your host, Anita Finley.
Okay, well, I am fired up this morning, and it's usually because Darwin Porter is on my show, and that's partially true, but also because I wanted to talk about him. You live in Staten Island. Whoa, you've been in the middle of this, haven't you?
I missed one of your 4 words. You're talking about Staten Island, right?
Yes, I am.
Well, the whole world is talking about Staten Island. In fact, many people are hearing of Staten Island for the first time.
Right.
And it's not a great bit of publicity for Staten Island, but this is an amazing story.
It is. It is an amazing story.
It's not being reported the way that I was taught to report on the Miami Herald. We were. It's amazing that I can. I think it was my early training as a reporter that I learned. There are 2 sides to all stories, and I'm amazed at some of the commentary, the hate in this country. But this country is, to my sad regret, is really separating into 2 different countries, and
2 different countries. That's interesting.
Some futurists. I don't know if you've ever heard the theory that the U.S. will one day break into 2 nations. It will be the Northeast will combine with the West Coast, meaning Washington, Oregon, and California, and there will be 2 separate countries.
No, I haven't. Do you think so?
I don't think, well, certainly I think politically that will happen. But just some comments on, if you don't mind, I could get a little personal this morning.
We want you to get personal. Good.
I can certainly see where, as I say, both sides are coming from. But I want to tell you about, first, I don't know why anyone wants to be a policeman. When I was growing up in Miami, boys often expressed a desire to be a fireman and a policeman. Neither profession would interest me at all.
I understand.
And I got my most baptism of fire about what it's like to patrol a city, actually in Los Angeles. I was writing a book called Fromer's Los Angeles, and I had heard that Jim Daugherty was a policeman. Now, Jim Daugherty is known to all Marilyn Monroe fans as the first husband of Marilyn Monroe. So I called him up, and we got along fabulously. We met for drinks that night. And then 2 nights later, he said, would you like to go on an all-night ride with me through Los Angeles and to get an inside view? He was suggesting I write a story about a policeman. Well, my God, what happened to us that night? It was a vision in horror in a world that I had not seen. For example, one of the most horrific things, in fact, it still haunts me, is he and his partner were called in, and a man had come home and caught his wife in bed with another man, and he had a gun, and he shot the man, and he cut off the breast of his wife. Oh, God. I could have been spared from that scene. And there were other scenes. There was a shootout. So I guess what I'm suggesting is the life of a policeman is absolutely horrible. And then also people being brutalized. There are certain policemen who lose control. And I thought Governor Mario Cuomo had the most enlightened point of view. Instead of getting really partisan, he lamented the death of all the people who have been the victim of overzealous police. And he also said, I have also attended the funerals of many a policeman in my day. So it's almost a combat zone, Anita, and these solutions, so-called solutions, are just simply Band-Aids. Nothing that is being proposed will ever work. And why won't it? Well, since the dawn of time, the have and the have-nots are always at war. For example, I read in almost prehistoric times that when one side of the valley had a famine and the other side had good rainfall, the people from the famine district crossed the mountain and raped, murdered, and pillaged the people and raided their grain harvest.
Well, let me propose. Let me tell you a few things that I was feeling. And I've been listening to the news a lot. Let's forget the policeman and the other. Let's revisit grand juries. And that was very intelligently discussed, that the grand jury system may not be the right thing anymore. Because, you see, I don't think this would have happened if the grand jury, that wasn't the final word. If it were some sort of an investigation and then it went to trial, it's different. But it seems like grand jury, you only hear one side. Even though the prosecutor tries to explain both sides, it hasn't worked. So maybe that's really one very important thing.
That has always been true. You know, that the grand jury thing really originated in England in the 12th century.
Good, because I don't know about that.
And we picked up that custom from them. And the reason it was in secret is they were, instead of policemen, they were fighting against and protesting against the king, or various kings. And so they kept the grand jury in secret. And so we just picked up that custom from the 12th century. The reason I've been called before grand juries in various cases, and I saw how they work. But the trouble is, there's so many court cases, particularly now. Everybody in America is suing all the time. I mean, I get threats of lawsuits all the time, and I've had many of them go through. Because if you're out there in media, as a travel writer, a hotel in Paris brought me before the French court because I made a rather criticism of his hotel, which I am entitled to do, by the way. It wasn't him personally, it was the hotel, but that was my job. And but the point that I'm making is, if they didn't have the grand jury, there's so many cases you might sue someone and it would come up 8 years from now.
Yeah, but anything serious like this, and where there is a discrepancy that's so big, I think there has to be some other thing. But anyway, the other thing that happened, I just wanted to share, and I know you probably had some exciting discussion. We should be going, and I should get off this. I'll tell you one thing. I just heard that a BBC report on my way driving in this morning, that in the 1960s, with Joan Baez and, all of the other young students at Berkeley, they went into this kind of same mode where they took over the building because they weren't allowed to speak their piece on the outside. So this is nothing new, except I think what's happened is we now have videos. We now see things. We don't have to wait to go to the movies on Saturday and see Movie Tone or hear about it. We're watching these things happen in front of us, and that makes a difference, don't you think?
Yeah, well, that's a real debate. Like stuff caught on video, can be controlled. Joseph Goebbels taught us that propaganda films can be manipulated, and in fact, it often. Many people think that may be a panacea, but on the other hand, there have been several cases in New York where people were caught on video, and the criminals often get caught would be far more than policemen, because we cannot say that all the police forces in America are evil people trying to kill minority groups. That's just simply not true. and many of them are to be admired, and I respect them. And I also, you know me well enough to know that I've always respected the rights of minorities. One thing that has come across very strongly is do not resist arrest. Can I tell you about the time I was arrested on Staten Island and how I handled it? I opened the door, and I was 42 years old, and there were 7 policemen from Staten Island, all with their guns drawn. And they identified me. They said, "Who are you?" I said, "My name is Darwin Porter." They said, "You live here?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "You're under arrest." Now, I knew enough to... A lot of these people try the case while they're being arrested. To resist arrest is a felony in New York. I don't know about Florida. It's a felony in New York. I figured I will not try the case with 7 policemen at my doorstep. So I went along, and the squad, they didn't handcuff me. I don't think I looked that violent. I went along in the squad car. Of course, I made a telephone call, and I had 3 top lawyers on Staten Island waiting there at the precinct. And I went in, and there were about 6 men there, and I found out what the charge was. They said, you have been charged with the kidnapping and rape of a 15-year-old girl. I was rather startled at that charge. In fact, we're bringing her in a few minutes to confront you. And I said, yes. They did bring in the girl. And now remember, I'm 42 years old. And she looked at me and started screaming and shouting. She said, "That's not the man. That old grandpa is not the man. It was 2 Puerto Rican boys." And then I figured out why I was booked. Some woman in Manhattan had saw this girl being pulled into a car, and she had written down the license plate. Well, at 8 o'clock that previous night, my new car had been stolen, and these 2 boys who could hardly drive had. So the only thing they had to go on was my license plate.
Oh.
And then, of course, you know how they call it a Charles Dickens coincidence. During the interrogation, which ended quickly with apologies, a report came in. They had found my car. These 2 boys had crashed it into a storefront in Jersey City. Well, of course, my problems weren't over because the owner of the store was threatening to sue me for $1 million for damages. And this was the notorious 70s, and I lived through a total lawless period in New York, and so a lot of my thinking about these matters is how I've experienced policemen, I've experienced criminals. I don't know if you know this, but I had 3 small apartment buildings torched to the ground in the 70s. I had 7 cars stolen, the one I just told you about, and I had 28 robberies. So I really came over to Staten Island to get away from, but there was no place in New York to get away from robbers. You know, New York became a lawless town, and so a lot of these problems stem from that era. Then Rudy Giuliani, a man that I don't always admire, he came in and started a major crackdown. And at one point, I was almost afraid to live in New York. I had gone to Italy for 6 weeks, and a friend who lives in a house across the street from me had died, and robbers had broken in and tied him up, and he lived alone. His wife had died, and he had to die that awful death of being, tied up, and I guess he just starved to death, and it was terrible. And God, I always was so afraid that would happen. And so I saw this awful, awful crime going on in New York, and it still goes on. But now there's something. Staten Island was always a very peculiar borough of New York. It is 70% white, and a lot of Irish and Italians here, and hundreds of policemen make their home on Staten Island. So they're very pro-police over here. And also, the mafia is centered on Staten Island. I wish I'd taken you by to see their mansions. And the mafia, you know, a lot of these drug wars and things don't occur on Staten Island because the mafia likes to keep it quiet on their home front because they raise their families here and they prefer a safer environment. But now more and more immigrants are coming in, and there's a lot of conflict now going on. This is the only Republican district. A Democrat just does not. In fact, one of my best friends, who's also my lawyer, ran for borough president on the Democratic ticket, and in fact, I put out a sign in the yard to vote for him. And 2 days later, that sign was torn
gone.
up and ripped apart. And well, of course, he lost. I think he got 28% of the vote.
That's okay, but Darwin, we lived in Ocean Ridge, and we had a sign up for a Democrat, as a matter of fact, and police came and said, we don't allow signs here. And I saw other signs, but you know, it's the same kind of stuff. But wait, Chris has been waiting around. He wants to say something, and I'm going to let him. Just hold on a minute.
Well, I was actually just about the grand jury thing, that we're the only country that still does grand juries. Every other country has done away with it.
That is true, yes. Well, I think it could be reformed, although, you know, it's like most court cases. I object to, for example, I believe O.J. Simpson killed those two people.
I do, too.
I mean, the evidence is overwhelming. In fact, I have a copy of, you know, he wrote a book called What Might Have Happened. He outlined the whole strategy, but he owed the millions to the what was his name? Ron, I forgot his last name.
I think Goldman.
What?
Ron Goldman.
He owed millions to the Goldmans, so they took the book and changed the title to "I Did It." Collected but it's the whole scenario. I have the book here on my shelf, and I think in America, juries get it. You know, let's face it, people are sentenced. In fact, the man just got out in New York. He had been sent up for 28 years for a crime he didn't commit. But I don't know. I mean, how are you going to handle? No system like this will ever be perfect. And the one thing that struck me, though, in all of these protests, I would have probably selected, if I wanted to protest, the 12-year-old boy who was shot in Cincinnati. I thought that was the most dramatic. Oddly enough, I often saw this man, Eric Garner, who was arrested. You know, he was arrested 30 times, and in a way, I think your luck runs out. He's what was called a street hustler, selling loosies. I think they have that in Miami too. Is, you know, that cigarettes are taxed so highly now that often people sell loosies, meaning unpackaged cigarettes, so people who like to smoke don't have to. And what happened with him? In fact, I used to see him. I passed by there every day. He would be selling things, and the merchants were objecting because they say, we pay taxes. That's true on Fifth Avenue. You know, they're chasing vendors like in front of Tiffany's, and Tiffany's is paying thousands and thousands of dollars, and they're selling cheap costume jewelry in front of Tiffany's. So we're living in such a multicultural society that I don't think these problems will go away. We just hope there will be people of understanding and goodwill, but there won't be.
You know,
I will say this.
Yes.
I have traveled all over the world, as you know, for 50 years. And terrible things have happened to me in America, including one ridiculous lawsuit from a gardener in a property I own in Georgia. And I found the worst thing down in Georgia is to be called a New Yorker. Right. That will get you indicted. I mean, I didn't realize they were carrying on they call it the War of Northern Aggression. And so I learned some things, although I'm from the South. I hadn't been there in a long time because, as you know, I grew up in Miami, and we didn't have a lot of the problems that we did in the old South in Miami. I mean, we had other problems, but the horrible, horrible thing is none of this will go away until the economic problem is solved. And the futurists, there are a group of people that assemble every year in Hawaii and in Honolulu, and I knew a member there. I sat in on one of their meetings, and they say with the world population, these problems are just going to go on and on. I once said, now, where can I go to escape all of this? And of all the countries of Europe, I thought the safest place would be Scotland. So guess what happened to me one time in Scotland? I was on this offshore island, and because for years I wrote a book on Scotland, which I thought was a very safe country. And then I spent my day, I had to check out these hotels and restaurants. Then I drove across a bridge. Well, there were 3 policemen waiting there for me because they knew I had to cross the bridge to get back to the mainland. And they surrounded my car, told me to get out. They pointed guns at me, and they said, you're under arrest. And again, I don't argue with the case. I wait till I'm taken to the precinct and everything. And at the precinct, I found out, they said, you're being charged with being an Irish terrorist. Oh my. I didn't have 3 lawyers I could summon. But fortunately, I had lunch with the governor of the island that day, and I put through a call to him. And what had happened, this was the time of all those bombings in England from the Irish terrorists. You know, in fact, I dined at a restaurant one night in London, and the next night I read in the papers that restaurant had been blown up in Belgravia. And, of course, the governor came down and said, oh, this man, he writes a book bringing tourists to Scotland. and I found out one hotel owner. I figured out who it was. All the hotel owners were very nice to me, and one hotel owner was very nasty. He said, I despise Americans. I will never, if an American came to my door, I would kick him in the ass. I said, well, sir, I'm sorry you feel that way. And, of course, I will not send any clients to you, but I really made him mad just by coming to his hotel. I never expected to find such anti-Americanism in Britain. Oddly enough, I did.
You know, I have to stop you because I don't know what you thought you were going to talk about today, and I'm going to apologize for taking you off track. But, on the other hand, for me, this is one of the best shows we've ever done because it's so appropriate, and and Chris has his hands up. We're loving this. I wish I had another half an hour to give you. Let me tell you, you are fantastic about this because who else would have had these experiences but someone like you, and you're like a gentle giant, and And so you've really made a difference in this, Darwin. I can't thank you enough.
How many people travel? You know, if you travel the world for 50 years, you see a hell of a lot of things, you know.
But you really put a perspective on that's helping me a little bit, because I am so angry and I am so with the protesters, and I really, I don't talk about my politics or anything on this show, but now they closed down, which is interesting. Last night, you probably read about it, the Art Basel is in Miami, and so nothing would do, but they've closed down I-95, and, these guys, they know what they're doing, and I'm happy, because what happens is what you said, the rich versus the poor. It's a lot of these people who are protesting, it's not that they're poor. They're just saying, we've got to do something that make you realize, and we're going to inconvenience you, that there's something that has to get done in this country. And what you said, maybe change the grand jury, maybe not, maybe do. But I'll tell you what, I'll bet the policemen, and I always said there's like 95% policemen are good, they're hardworking, it's a hard job. But the other the small ones that don't, the ones that have aggression, and they're hurting mostly minorities, because see, like you said, you go get your lawyer, you can do this and that. They can't do it. And the fact, it's one thing to be incarcerated, and we know what's in the jails now, is to be killed, like you said, that 12-year-old, it's insanity. And it's got to stop. And maybe this was why they're doing it. Anyway, we have to go. We have no more time, but I love you this morning.
Well, Anita, we wish we want peace in the land.
Oh, gosh, Darwin, thank you. And we're going to look for your new book. But
actually, I had a very hot topic I was going to talk about this morning.
Sorry, let's do it next. You know what we're going to do? I have some extra time in December. I'm going to have you come on again, okay?
Well, I want to talk about the attack on senior citizens going on by politicians in America who are attacking senior citizens who are still holding office. And I'm a senior citizen.
Okay,
and
we're going to do it. We've got to go now, but I'm gonna get you on another day in December. Okay, we're going to call you. I want you.
Well, it will be my defense of senior citizens.
Okay, bye, Darwin.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, the next interview is going to be great. Dina Kay, who's the daughter of Danny Kay, is going to tell you all about her life and his life. The Boomer Expo is coming. It's not too soon to make plans to attend the one and only 13th Boomer Expo. Save the date, Tuesday, January 20th, 2015. Held at Seminole Hard Rock Hotel Casino in Hollywood. At each Boomer Expo, veterans are our special guests, with 4 lucky vets winning $250 in cash. Enter our 50 drawings to win cash and fabulous products. It's a big fun day and it's free. Call 561-735-6525 for information about exhibiting or attending. Call 561-735-6525 or go to www.boomerexpofl.com. That's www.boomerexpofl.com.
Suzanne Roberts, host of the TV show Seeking Solutions with Suzanne, has spent a lifetime seeking to help others. With her talent and creativity, she has a remarkable career in public and community service. And for the past 14 years, the 93-year-old visionary has been on a mission to provide America's fastest-growing demographic with thought-provoking information to improve your life. As the creator and host of TV's Seeking Solutions with Suzanne, Roberts provides both boomers and seniors with insights to enrich their lives, expand their horizons, and broaden their medical knowledge. Fearless and forthright, Roberts has demonstrated everything from belly dancing to riding a Harley-Davidson. From medical procedures to in-depth interviews, this 2-time Emmy winner embraces every adventure with her signature tagline, "If I can do it, you can too." Seeking Solutions with Suzanne can be seen on Tuesdays at 8:30 a.m. and Saturdays 7:30 a.m. on Reinventing Your Life TV and daily on CNN Headline News. Check local listings. Every day in the U.S., over 1,000 people are injured injured or killed in distracted driving crashes. Admit it, you've had some scary moments yourself. Did you know that texting for just 3 seconds at highway speed is like traveling the length of a football field blindfolded? For a safer drive, you need to have a Safe Drive system installed on your vehicle. The Safe Drive system alerts you with dashboard lights and a warning sound if you get too close to the car in front of you or if you stray out of your lane.
I was driving on I-95 and my mind was somewhere else. Suddenly the system began screaming. I was in shock. I slammed on the brakes and was able to stop at the last minute. If it wasn't for the Safe Drive, I would have run into the car in front of me. The system saved my life.
You don't have to buy a new luxury car to get this important safety feature. Upgrade your car today with the Safe Drive system and protect yourself and your loved ones. Call 800-825-0997. That's 800-825-0997. 800-825-0997.
Well, this is a very, very exciting radio show. It's not often that we get to have someone who is in her own right a star, but also the daughter of Danny Kaye. And she's calling in from Paris, so it's nighttime there, but we are going to introduce a marvelous woman who, of course, is so in love with her father and what he's done. And I was just telling her prior to this that White Christmas just is... That's Christmas. You just hear the song. I mean, you just know that it's can't have Christmas without White Christmas. And we live in South Florida.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that. And Paramount has just gone all out on this new Blu-ray combo pack for the 60th anniversary of the release of White Christmas. And it's a twin anniversary for my father because 2014 is also the 60th anniversary of his appointment as UNICEF's first Goodwill Ambassador. There was no such thing before they appointed him. And so Paramount has included, as part of the multi-bonuses in this pack, the documentary called Assignment Children that he made. It was his first trip around the world for UNICEF, around part of the world. And he actually received an Academy Award for it. So I am doubly thrilled that people who will enjoy the treasure that is White Christmas can also see part of what was an integral, important part of my father's life, which was his work with UNICEF.
Dina, I have to say, though, how much I admire you because I have this wonderful biography of you. And, oh, my heavens, you never stopped. When did you start? When you were 10?
No, I think I was still in Camden, Vermont when I was 10. But, well, you know, I grew up in, I had a working mother. I mean, my mother went to the studio, wrote a lot of my father's material. So the role model I grew up with was that I was going to do something with my life. And so I spent many years as a journalist on radio and television and in print. And I also run now the Family Foundation, and we do a lot of different things. One of the things we do is I have to say this, we donate to UNICEF. But 2013 was the centennial of my father's. He would have been 100. And, you know, a lot of people say to me, as you asked before we went on the air, do I introduce myself as Danny Kaye's daughter? And after many decades, I really don't. But during the centennial, I became that once again, and it was just such an honor because I took the time to really view my father as the artist he was, and I had to comment on the films, and so I watched them more as a student of film, rather than his daughter. And honestly, there was nobody like him, ever. I mean, there was no one who had the multiple talents he did, who then had all the hobbies he did, flying a jet plane, conducting orchestra